Welcome to Season 2 of The Good Pod. Today's podcast is presented by Dr. Barry Napier.
Hello, today I'm talking about judging others, a favourite battleground for many Christians. And in fact, I get a lot of emails and letters saying that I must not speak against this or that sin. Oh dear. Is it right to judge others? I have been told on many occasions that we must not judge others, which itself, of course, is to judge me. Is this true? Before we continue, let us differentiate judgmentalism and judgment. And this is the problem, really. To be judgmental is to be pompously pious and imperious, usually wrongly, but to judge is to weigh up matters and to convey one's conclusions. This is valid. It is the proper way to do science, a proper way to do theology. Indeed, it is essential, not just to proper Bible reading and application, but to everything in life. Now, when we examine Scripture, we find that Christians are to judge each other. We will not look at all texts which refer to judging others. So I will give you one example here, and I take the text from Matthew 7, verses 1 to 5. Now it states this: "Judge not, that ye be not judged. For with what judgment ye judge, ye shall be judged. And why beholdest thou the mote that is in thy brother's eye, but condemnest not the beam that is in thine own eye? Thou hypocrite, first cast out the beam out of thine own eye, and then shalt thou see clearly to cast out the mote of thy brother's eye." Now, that does not tell us that we must not judge. Now, I've got a few notes here that will explain that verse. Now, to judge, in this case, means to condemn, to deliberately pick out or select or choose something, to argue against it, to subject to censure, to pronounce an opinion on what is right and what is wrong. Thus, to judge here can refer to something petty or to something serious. That is, judge not. Now, the judgment that is spoken of in that same verse is a different word, meaning to condemn the faults of others with the inferred meaning of being a hypocrite. Then what is this mote? It's a straw, a chaff, a small twig, a speck of something. A beam, on the other hand, is a large piece of wood, solid enough to hold up something, like a roof. No problem in finding it. So the supposed sin you find in someone else could very well be far less than the worst sin in yourself. The eye in the verse means either the physical or the metaphorical eye. That is, to see with your mind's eye or to see physically. And if, on the other hand, you are not talking properly but are a hypocrite, the meaning for that is an actor or a pretender, a dissembler, to feign or impersonate or simulate. In other words, you're two-faced. And what must we do? It says that we must look at the mote, the beam in our own eye before casting out the mote in our friend's eye. It means to pull out violently or sternly, to excrete out, to tear out quickly, one thing overcoming in another thing, to reject with contempt. So, if we check these meanings against the text, we will soon discover that judging others is not the issue in this text. The argument is aimed at those who are hypocrites. They pretend to be holier than thou, but they condemn the very same things they themselves are guilty of. That's the point. They see, or think they do in their minds, the massive flaws in others and blow them out of all proportion, whilst their own flaws, of the same kind, are much greater and far more obvious. They are warned to take a close look at themselves and to rectify their own errors immediately. Only then may they approach others in an attitude of humility in order to help or warn them, not just to pull them down. This is repeated in a very similar way in later texts written by Paul. In Luke 12:56-57, the Lord scoffs at us for refusing to judge. Remember that? He laughs at us for refusing to judge, even the smallest of things. He said, "You hypocrites, you can discern the face of the sky and of the earth, but how is it that you do not discern this time? Yea, and why even of yourselves judge ye not what is right?" The sense of this is very straightforward. We are all very good at judging the weather and everything else we see around us. We even judge things we know nothing about, yet we pretend not to be able to judge other believers when they're not doing what is right. And that's why the Lord scoffs. I say pretend because that is exactly what is done. To our faces, people tell us they cannot judge. But behind our backs, it is a different story. Even if we say we never discuss the flaws of others, the very fact that we say that means we inwardly and secretly think about it and inwardly judge. It is farcical and dishonest to say we do not judge others, as Christ himself observed. Of course we judge others all the time, every day. And as we see in John 5 verse 30, the judgment of Christ is perfect because it is based on the Father's will. This is reinforced in later biblical texts, which point out that when we judge, we must do so righteously. Again, that is the main point. We must judge righteously, not simply absolve ourselves from judging at all. Then in 1 Corinthians 6 and others, we are castigated by the apostle for not judging each other and for letting our arguments spill over into the world, which eagerly likes to see strife in the churches. We shall judge the world and the angels one day, yet we claim we cannot judge each other in the smallest of matters. That is just rubbish. And that's what the apostle says. Indeed, he is disgusted with us and says, "I speak to your shame." So you must judge. If we may not judge each other, then what on earth did Paul mean when he said, "I speak unto wise men, judge what I say"? Unless we wish to make complete nonsense of language, it means we should examine and pass conclusions. That is, we must judge. It is important that we judge each other, because by doing so we will not be judged by the world. We can nip sins in the bud, so that our dirty washing is not presented to all to see. And when we are judged, it is for the purpose of chastening, stopping us from doing wrong and urging us to do good. It is a dynamic way of faith. We often see news about this or that Christian who sins. The worst thing to do is to try to hide it. We must be frank, honest, transparent, and remember, judging need not be bad, but a step towards being a better Christian. Churches desperately need this kind of critical analysis. It is a sad reflection on our Christian lives that so few believers are willing to be judged by their fellows. They prefer to carry on in their sins and to change their lives. On the other hand, many Christians think they are always right in a judgment, when in fact they may merely be expressing badly formed and highly subjective opinions. Opinions are not valid interpretations. And as an aside, I wish that a lot of people who contact me would remember that their opinions, the same as my opinions, are worthless unless they're valid interpretations. Godly judgment has nothing in common with opinions of men. True judgment is a careful weighing up of the facts. They are measured against Scripture, our only source of declared truth. If they fall below the biblical standard, then they are judged to be wanting, and a warning can be issued. Judging others is partly a function of discipline, and the aim of all discipline is not to bring people down, but to bring a person back to God and the right path. We must never be afraid to judge others, so long as we are not guilty of the same things ourselves. And, of course, we must always do so with a willing heart, and the idea of bringing them back to what is good. God requires us as thinking, rational beings to order our lives according to his word. We cannot do this without applying judgments about everyday situations as well as about serious and far-reaching ones. It is a lie to say we do not judge others, because we do it all the time. Even now, some of you are judging what I say. Like the famed evangelical smile that can hide the face of anger or hatred, a supposed non-judgment attitude can hide a heart full of hypocrisy. We all judge all kinds of things as well as people. Judge then, but judge well. Warn, but do not be guilty of the same things. I no longer listen to those who tell me not to judge others. They do not know what they are talking about. Often their motives are questionable. The one who shouts the most about not judging others is the most likely candidate for being judgmental in his heart, with hypocrisy. They also tend to allow what God does not, for one of many reasons. Those who say we must not judge may just be sitting on the fence. They're afraid to say anything. Many Christians are afraid to speak the truth, or afraid to be wrong, so they judge almost nothing. Others may be guilty of doing what others are doing, so they naturally do not want that sin highlighted by the proper judgment of their fellows. And some are merely ignorant of biblical teaching on the judging of others. And I see this a lot. In reality, when I say some are ignorant, I really mean many are ignorant, and think they are righteous by not judging when they should. Unbelievers point the finger at Christians who dare to question their humanistic, unbelieving ideas and practices. They claim that Christians must not be judgmental, when in fact they are really saying, shut up, we want the world to be run as a godless estate with no holds barred. Judge and judge well. And to summarize, to judge is not the same as to be judgmental. To be judgmental is to have a nasty disposition towards someone else and to speak ill of them with malice. To judge is to think over things, come to a sound conclusion, and help people to get back onto the right path. And Christ himself, of course, says we must judge.